Once you have your image cut out, there's a couple of minor adjustments we'll make to the exposure and contrast levels. So in here, make sure that you have your actual image layer selected. And then you can go up to adjustment. And the first one I like to start with is brightness and contrast. Um, Take a look at your highlights and your shadows, and you want this to be somewhat balanced. You don't want your whites to be really, really super bright. For example, if it starts washing out like this, that's too much. So have it to where your whites are looking bright, but they're not obnoxious. From there, take a look at your shadows. Contrast is really going to boost both ends of the spectrum, both your dark shadows and your super bright whites. It doesn't do much for those midtones. So when you're adjusting contrast, either that means you're killing both the shadows and the highlights, or if you boost contrast, it's really going to emphasize the darks and the lights. So again, try and achieve a balance here. So I think hereish looks good, and then we'll apply. Now, as you are looking at kind of the composition of your photo, use this arrange tool to kind of make it a bit more of a visually appealing composition, meaning your subject matter typically shouldn't be in the center of the photo, right smack dab in the middle. That's not real visually appealing. So I'm going to resize this just a bit and kind of drag him over to one side a little bit. Makes it look a bit nicer. And then from here, what I'm going to do is add a couple of layers over the top to apply a bit of a screen gradient. So I'm going to add an empty layer, and then I'm going to go over to the fill bucket here, and I'm going to choose a color. Now, this is your color selector down on the bottom. I've already chosen this nice orange. You can choose whatever you would like. You hit OK, and then somewhere right in the middle of your composition, go ahead and touch down. Now it'll fill the entire composition with that color, and all you're going to do with that then is hit those three little dots, and under the blend mode, what I'd like you to try is one of these. Now I'll give you screen as something that works really well, or overlay is a really nice one too. That keeps some of those shadows in there, makes it a little bit more natural looking. So I'm going to go with overlay. And then once that's done, if you'd like to name it something, maybe this is your blend layer. You can just get out of there. Now from here, I'm going to create another empty layer. And this time I'm going to apply a gradient. So the gradient is right next to the fill bucket. And then up here, you can choose what type of gradient you want. They have a whole bunch of stock gradients, but just to keep things basic, I'm going to go with this very first one, which is already selected. As you are fiddling around with gradients, you can use these little switches, the keys, to adjust the gradient so that you can see more or less of one side. You can also, if you can also change the color of each side. Let's say I wanted to change the black to red. I could do that, and then it changes my gradient to that. Okay, so you have complete customization of over what we're doing here. I'm going to keep it at orange to black, and I don't want a ton of black, so I'm going to move that just a bit over. Now, from here, you kind of choose which direction that gradient is going. So you'll basically touch down, hold your trackpad or your mouse, whatever you're using, and then whenever you let go, that's going to be the opposite side of the gradient. So over here, I'm going to touch down, reach across, I'm holding down, and then when I let go, I can control the direction, and I can also control the depth. So if I stop here, you'll see that not much of the gradient goes across, and I'll undo that, as opposed to if I touch down and go all the way to here, that changes that quite a bit. So take a look at what you would like to do, and I'm going to kind of achieve a little balance, kind of a diagonal angle here, and go right across. Now, obviously, that covers up your subject matter, so again, you're going to need to change the blend mode. This is where the screen overlay, even get into some of these soft light, hard light ones are just fine. Okay, so I'm going to go screen on this one, just so that you can see through. I can still see some of those shadows, but it gives it kind of a nice warm feeling on there. Again, I'm going to rename this. I like to name each layer so that I know what I'm looking at, and that's my gradient.